Hello, once again, I'm Doc Rodden, and this is Horror News Radio, the official Gruesome Magazine podcast. And back with me again this week are the scariest, goriest, bloodiest co-hosts on the net. And tonight we're reviewing Studio 666 featuring the Foo Fighters. Yeah. All right. And of course, by the goriest, scariest, and bloodiest co-host, I mean the one and only award-winning filmmaker, Christopher G. Moore. How you doing, sir?
Rock on, Doc.
Rock on, indeed. What do we think of horror films that star, that are led by non-traditional actors? And by that, in this case, I mean a rock band, David Grohl and the rest from Foo Fighters. What do you think of that idea?
It can be interesting. I think that the problem is when you take people that are strong in one medium and you put them in another medium, sometimes it doesn't work, and you really have to sort of, it's always kind of weird. It's even weird when you see it in Scooby-Dooville when
no, you're right. It is. You were animated.
When the mystery team, when they meet up with like the Globetrotters or a lot of these people, it's always kind of a weird thing. And this is what this kind of feels like. And I mean, granted, if they're playing themselves as opposed to playing other people, it may work. But sometimes maybe they need to stick to music instead of pursuing anything. But I think when you have something that's not really taking itself too seriously and they're having a little bit of fun, you can sort of overlook types of things. And I think there is a charisma, at least for some of these bandmates that work for a horror film, but I don't think they're going to be, they're not going to be in P.T. and Paul Thomas Anderson's films anytime soon, or anything.
Maybe driving by. I mean, having musicians in movies is not a new thing. Back in the day, it's always. I mean, you look, Elvis even back further with the Rat Pack, and it just keeps going. I mean, and many times musicians end up being really good actors. I mean, think of Lady Gaga. She's doing wonderful.
Well, I mean, or even I made a Paul Thomas Anderson crack, but his latest film actually has all the band members from Haim, and they're really good. I'm really surprised that the one of the girls from that, who's the main actress in that, I'm surprised she wasn't nominated for any awards, because she actually does a really good job in that. So I think there's moments where they have that. I mean, you have that charisma when you're being a rock star. Sometimes you're portraying something. That's why Kiss puts on makeup and all these different people. They portray Gore. They're portraying these characters. Absolutely. So I think sometimes they can do that, and I think if they're playing themselves, sometimes they can get away with it a little bit.
Of course, the Beatles did that often, and then, "Kiss Me, the Phantom" is. Well, we should probably stop there, right? All right, so we're here to review Studio 666. We're going to give our first impression. That will be spoiler-free, and then we're going to dive into a discussion. We will get into a few spoilers because it's a horror film, and there are great gory deaths, and we've got to talk about them, and that's going to spoil some things. It's not really, but it is, but not really. And then we're going to wrap things up with our final thoughts, our score, a 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. And, of course, we hope you enjoy not only this review, but many others that we have on the site. And, of course, hit the subscribe button, the like button, or share with a friend. And we will be eternally grateful. And, of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Studio 666. Or, Kiss Meets the Phantom. Go ahead and let us know about that one if you want. It doesn't matter. We want to hear from you. All right. Let's do the card and get into this. What do you say?
Sounds good.
All right. Studio 666 from Open Road Films, available in theaters beginning February 25th of 2022. Legendary rock band the Foo Fighters move into Encino, a mansion steeped with grisly rock and roll history, to record their much anticipated 10th album. And things go awry. That's true. All right. Directed by BJ McDonnell, written by Dave Grohl and Jeff Butler and Rebecca Hughes. The cast includes Dave Grohl, Taylor Hawkins, Rami, Jaffee, Chris Shiflett, Pat Schmear, and Nate. I think it's Nate, not Nate. I think I spelled that. Nate Mendel. Yay me. Also Whitney Cummings, Leslie Grossman, Garlin, Will Forte, Kerry King, Jenna Ortega, and Jason Trost. Now, Jason Trost, I think you would recognize. Of course, there's a cameo with Jason that's pretty interesting too. But you like the films from Jason Trost. He was with John Carpenter in the car. He had the patch.
Yeah. Did you have John Carpenter listed on there?
I did not. I didn't put it on there, but he was a cameo.
I was surprised. Well, I mean, actually, if you pay attention to the credits, I think him and his son, they helped compose some of the music to it.
I think they did.
So I mean that I think all the different cameos are very surprising in regards to it and everything. The Jason Trost, who I actually got to meet at Nightmares Film Festival many years ago. He's actually done the FP and the FP2. Have you ever seen those films, which are amazing? And he's actually working on 3 and 4. And you can actually
3 and 4.
3 and 4. He was basically shot them back to back, and he's shot some stuff during the COVID outbreak and stuff. He shot some stuff. But yeah, he's an amazing filmmaker, and he's an amazing dude. And I remember hearing him talk about, like, he supposedly had a friend that got him a part on this, and he gets to hang out with John Carpenter
of all things.
And I was like, man, that's awesome. So yeah, he's amazing. I'm glad he's got some opportunities to be in this, because it was kind of cool to see people that I know. So now there's was it 2 degrees of Dave Grohl now instead of Kevin Bacon, or 2 degrees of John Carpenter?
There you go.
So, but yeah, it's good to see him in this. Somebody I know, along with all these other superstars.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. All right, let's get into this and give our first impression of this movie, which we both saw in the theaters, which is a thing this day and age. Go ahead and let us have it.
I think my biggest issue going into this, I had high expectations. I wouldn't say high expectations, I guess. I guess there was always the worry that this felt like it was going to be like Scooby-Doo with rockers or whatever, and if it was going to be overly goofy or overly stupid or whatever. And I think the best way to compare this film to is it feels like an 80s film. Mm-hmm. It feels like a movie that could have been made in the 80s, probably with a little bit more style thrown in, I guess, in certain parts. But it feels like that. It's got all kinds of wonderful practical effects, some really amazing practical kills, and some practical creatures and monsters. And it has that sort of goofy sensibility of some 80s films. But I think, I enjoyed it, but I wasn't blown away by it. I think the tone seems to be a little, I wish it sort of stuck to one specific tone. I think you can still do straight horror stuff and have comedy, but I almost feel like it could have leaned into the goofy comedy more, because there's a few moments I laughed out loud, and seeing it in a theater is always the best, because everybody laughs together. And there's some moments that are really laugh out loud type stuff. And then there's some really funny cameos that sort of knock you to the side. But yeah, I think it made me kind of yearn. Anytime I'd see like these goofy comedy moments, it kind of made me yearn to see more of that, I don't know, evidently this is based on a simple idea that Dave Grohl had. And so it feels like that idea was kind of stretched out, but a little too thin. So by the end, it feels like it's kind of stumbling to get to the very end, which you could sort of see coming a mile away how it's probably going to end. But it has a lot of great homages to everything from the Evil Dead book, to
definitely
to like Exorcist, what we do in the shadows. I mean, there's a lot of moments from other horror films that you can sort of see in this, and I think you can definitely see that there's a love for horror cinema in this. But again, it's one of those films where I almost again, I wish they kind of, you know me, I love a good horror comedy.
Yes,
And
you do.
I feel like it could have leaned into that a whole lot more than what it did. It was just a little bit of smattering here and there. So, but other parts, there's also parts where the comedy doesn't hit. You know, there's a really silly conversation they have at the very beginning where they're talking about Dune movie or something. It's like, okay. So yeah, I kind of wish it did, but you know, I think when it gets to the gore type stuff, it's A+ of the gore stuff. And I think also, like I said before we even got into this, sometimes when you have musicians and you put them in the films, they're great as musicians, but not as good as actors. And I think some of the band members probably need to stick to making music. But overall, it's an enjoyable film. I guess I just wished I kind of yearned for more out of it than what I got. But I think coming out of it, the more I thought about it, the more I kind of enjoyed it. Because you know me, I love 80s films, 80s horror films. And I think it feels like an 80s horror film that could have fit right in with that. So yeah, it's an enjoyable film. I just wish, again, there was more meat to the comedy bone.
Yeah, I'm not far from you on here. I thought it was entertaining and a fun watch, but it's not groundbreaking. It's not going to be on the best of the year, but it's nowhere near the worst of the year either. I mean, it is really an entertaining watch, and I think it's, if you're a fan of horror comedies or Foo Fighters, you're going to enjoy it. There's plenty to enjoy. I don't know if it takes any risks, right? And it also doesn't necessarily have anything to balance opposite the band, right? There's no real antagonist or no. It needed a personality to be on the opposite side of them. We kind of get Whitney Cummings for a little bit, and and some of the other cast, but none of them are throughout the entire film. And it needed something like that to for balance, because like you said, it feels very 80s, and it has a lot of the 80s feel, but it's kind of like more like Charles Band or Corman 80s, some of those films, than maybe some of the it's not a slasher film, although it does have some really awesome kills from various things. Mostly David Grohl. We'll get a little small spoilers, but anyway, some of the band members shine a little brighter than the others, but at the same time, I think they all felt comfortable. It never felt like egregious. It never felt like, it was never like, oh, that hurts watching them. But it just, it's a little, a little shy of the mark. But at the same time, it does feel like anytime you get like a group of comedians or musicians, facing off against a horror thing. What was it? The Bowery Boys used to go up against Bela Lugosi all the time, right? In a couple of the movies. But so it needed that kind of thing, I guess, is where I'm heading. But at the same time, it delivered. I laughed. I enjoyed the gore, but I think I'd rather be paying matinee price than full price. I think that's kind of telling right there, and we'll leave it at that. You agree?
I mean, again, I enjoyed it. I in fact, I think there's a kill with the chainsaw that's better than the kills in the actual recent Texas Chainsaw Massacre. just in its uniqueness.
Yes, very. It's probably
not in brutality, but uniqueness.
Yeah.
That to me, that's probably one of the most memorable kills that I'll probably remember for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So and those type of
and there's a raccoon that's pretty wonderfully realized. Right, and then the book, like you said, that.
Well, yeah, there's some really, really cool visual stuff, but then it's like, yeah, but then it almost, there's a moment where it felt more Wayne's World. There's a part where they just have these chips out. It's obvious product placement.
Yes,
parts. And I was like, it felt like the Wayne's World thing where like, have some pizza from Pizza Hut. But yeah, so yeah, they're I mean, that's a cool. I mean, there's a really cool design of like their version of the Necronomicon, you know, and there's a really cool thing with sort of dissected raccoon, like you said, and so there's some really, I mean, there's even these sort of creatures and these sort of like shadow creatures that they're kind of, I mean, they're definitely very 80s.
Demonic ghosts, yes, yeah.
Yeah, they're more 80s. That they're definitely, it feels very old school, practical, low budget 80s monsters, you know, but it works for what they're going for, you know, so you don't really, now if this were in like some other big budget horror film, you probably would question it more, like if it was a James Wan something, but this one, it feels kind of right at home because we already have that sort of like 80s vibe with everything. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think yeah, I think when your biggest antagonist is actually Dave Grohl, he's just I don't know, he looks too good looking, I guess, to sort of to be menacing, you know.
But at the same time, there are a couple really good shots. There's one where his eyes turn black and he's doing the Kubrick stare, right?
Yeah.
Head down, eyes up, and of course, you know, some of my favorite scenes are him floating around, and you know that montage, as you said, is hilarious.
Yeah, although you could do a drinking game every time he puts his
hair back behind his ears.
Hair behind his ears. I don't know if you noticed that. I kept noticing it every time he's looking around. He's doing that. Maybe it's just a fidgety type thing. But yeah, I think.
Well, the location's good, right? The location's good. Which
actually is the house where they recorded their last album, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's actually what gave him the idea to shoot something there that got turned into a feture film. That living room is actually where they recorded their last album.
Oh wow, it works. Yeah, and the story, like we were talking about, it's simple enough. You know, it's very straightforward. You know, they need to record an album. They go to the house. There's some supernatural shenanigans going on, and David Grohl gets caught up in the middle of it, and then, you know, one by one people start to die. And there's plenty of cast members, and there's also plenty, you know, from the band, and there's also plenty of other people that show up.
Some really, yeah, because I mean, going into this, I had only seen like a trailer, so I didn't really know a few of the cameos. I mean, I guess we kind of spoiled the one with the John Carpenter thing, but I mean, there's other cameos I wasn't really expecting, and that actually added an element of humor, you know. I mean, I guess we already sort of know that the comedian Whitney Cummings is in this, and she's got there's a few funny parts, and
I mean, she's actually a supporting character. It's a little more than a day player.
But I will say, like, you know, even though I felt like some of the bandmates were kind of wooden, the one guy, Rami, who's like the more crystal healing dude or whatever of the band, he's actually the more comedic of all of them. I think, although Pat Smear had a few funny bits and things he did, but yeah, I don't know. It felt very shoot from the hip, I guess. It felt very like everything. Yeah, it felt very sort of loose storyline wise, and if you even try to logistically figure out how people get A to B, or your head's gonna hurt. So you can't really think. You got to put your brain on autopilot and just enjoy it. So I mean, yeah, it's got some really funny moments and stuff that I really laughed out loud at. Great kills. And I will say I really love the music score to this. There's some really cool music that would set up to certain things, and I just love that. And I think it's probably due to John Carpenter and some of the people involved with that. That worked really well. And evidently the fake band that was killed previously, evidently they created the music for that. The Widow whatever the band of that, whatever that band. And we have a return of is it Jenny Ortega? Is that her name?
Jenna Ortega. Yeah.
Yeah, who was previously in Scream.
Yep.
But
and
yeah,
I think she's Wendy in the Wednesday Addams. I think she's going to be in the.
Oh yeah, she's going to be
right?
in the new series done by Tim Burton. But yeah, I mean it's got it's not a huge comedy through and through. It's not. There's a little smattering of it. It's almost like when you accidentally drop popcorn on the way to the theater. It's a little smattering of popcorn flecks of comedy.
It was to be funnier than it is. But it is more. Just to be fair, it is more to address what you said at the beginning. It is more Abbott Costello than it is Scooby-Doo. So if
I think that's giving it too much.
Well, it's not as funny as Abbott Costello, and I love Abbott Costello so much. I think more in that tone.
Well, I think it's trying to be. I think it's more earnest, scared stupid than it is Luke
or Elvira
Costello. Because I think if you want to think of like the premier way to have like a normal group of people encountering monsters, you know, Abbott and Costello versus like Frankenstein or that kind of stuff. That stuff's A level,
right.
You know, compared to everything else. So I think this is any of those type of things where you have like a normal type of group. You know, I mean, this is more. I don't know compared to Elvira, but it's more just one of those sort of cheesy films we see every once in a while where you have some character in that environment.
Yeah. Well, it's We'll stick with that. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let's give it our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. Christopher, you are up first, sir.
Yeah, Studio 666. It's probably halfway where it needs to be. So maybe it's Studio 333. I mean, I think you can see what it's going for, and you can see that they seem to be having fun with what they're doing. But it is a little bit bare bones, I guess, in its approach and kind of stretched out story wise. But there's moments. Those funny, weird moments that made me laugh out loud that just made me sort of like, oh man, I wish they'd done this more throughout. This would have been the most hilarious comedy ever. But yeah, there's some lull moments throughout, and I think the concept gets really stretched very thin by the end. But it has some great cameos, some great music, some really great kills. Yeah. So, overall, I will give it I'll give it a 3.5.
3.5.
So I give it a 3.5 because I did enjoy it. It's not like one of those movies like. You thought maybe you wouldn't mind, you'd rather pay matinee. It's like I didn't mind paying normal price for it. I just wish it had more of those parts that I really enjoyed. As for favorite scene, I'm gonna have to go with my favorite kill.
Yes,
which is the sex scene kill, which is both hilarious in how it starts.
Oh my god, those the thongs.
The guy takes his shirt off and he's got a heart shaved in his chest, and his hair is shaved into a heart. But anyway, just how that they get cut up with a chainsaw, which how it emerges is like a really amazing scene. I want to kind of know how they did that, because you see like the chainsaw come through her face and then split him in half, and then you see him split, and I was like, damn. I was like, whoa, that's pretty amazing. I mean, how Dave Grohl could have gotten there so fast and be
that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
But how does Scooby-Doo get where they go? So yeah, that's probably my favorite scene. I really enjoyed that scene. I wouldn't mind watching that over again, because it's just very funny. Because again, that Rami guy, he's very funny. You got Whitney Cummings, and that's just the one of the best kills I've seen in a very long time in a horror film. I mean, better than a lot of these slasher films. So I guess that's why we're comparing to slasher. Because basically, when he starts killing people, it's almost like it turns into like a supernatural slasher by the end.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you could say that. I feel like it's akin to it, but it's not actually a slasher. It's more like I said, Evil Dead kind of thing, or
well, everybody gets killed in different ways. So
yeah,
it feels very
that's
Friday
true. That's true. And and the kills are fun. And you talked about the drummer who doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue, but when it comes to his scene, every band member gets their own scene where something terrible happens to them, and his scene with the whole finish the song and the drum and the cymbal is really awesome. And since you picked that one, I'm going to pick the cymbal scene because I just love the whole as he body falls down. It was just really well. Dave always talks about he loves set pieces, right? He loves when horror films have set pieces, and this film definitely has a set piece. It's moving from one to the next, but in a way that makes sense for the progression of the story because of the nature of, how the Grohl character is taking them out one by one. So it makes sense and it works and it's lively and fun, and I enjoyed it. I think 3.5 is actually the perfect score, and that's what I have as well. And I would recommend it. Again, I think when this gets to like a Shudder type scenario, which it would be perfect for Shudder, it's a must watch, maybe multiple times. It's really fun. And of course, the more you love the band, and there's plenty of people that do, I think the more you'll like it because what I enjoyed, what I really respect about this is how much fun and chemistry they seem to be having, right? I don't know if you ever like get into like, the background of bands and stuff and watch like the, what happened to the Eagles and shit like that. Seeing the chemistry of six individuals that actually get along and seem to have fun, even when they're, bickering in the movie, but it's, you can still see the chemistry between them. And I really enjoyed that. And I think that's what carries the film when it's, when it's stumbling to be funny or, isn't doing the gore. Thankfully, these guys are fun to watch, regardless of how skilled they are in actually acting, the chemistry goes a long way. And, I mean, the setup is good. The setting is good, rather, the house, and it's filmed really well. There's some great shots, like the monsters coming up the steps after, out of the basement. They actually look creepy and scary. And when the guys are running around like Scooby-Doo, they are running around like Scooby-Doo and, going from room to room with the monster in the corner kind of floating around. And that's a lot of fun. Kind of takes a while to get to there, but when it does, I had a ball. 3.5. Favorite scene is the symbol. If I can't have the kill, and of course I like the raccoon too. I was just, if they could have got a certain person to voice a cameo on that would have been funny. But that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
Rocket.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a way that this film probably could have been better is if they went and if they went and recorded in that house, and then there was another person, like a Vincent Price type character.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You know what I mean? Like you were saying, it's like, I feel like instead of Dave Grohl being the center of that, I think if them all reacting like the Scooby Gang around all the evil, and then each one of them being killed off or whatever, I think that probably would have worked better. Having somebody who's a more central, like a character actor that could act against them, and and then they're the evil person, and then I think maybe Dave Grohl could have been the final girl by the end of it. I kind of wish they'd done something like that, because I think it probably would have been more fun acting off of someone as opposed to being the main thing. But it still works better than Kiss in a movie. So they have that going for it.
There's a reason why to watch Kiss Meets the Phantom. Acting isn't
or any band. Most bands and films,
I certainly, we won't get a Studio 666 Part 2 because it's just
they did say on an interview, I'm not sure if they were joking, that they'd love to expand it by putting other bands in movies, but I think they were thinking about putting them in other genres.
Yeah, yes.
Like Weezer in a rom-com or something.
Yeah. But I certainly appreciate that they wanted to make a film, and they wanted to make a horror film, a horror comedy, and I thank them for it. I enjoyed myself. So there you go.
Yeah. So I mean, they, it's cool that they sort of like, hey, let's turn this into a movie, and they made a movie out of it. So it's more than the rest of us can say,
And they do, get outside their own music, at least for one scene. Hello.
Yes.
There's a cameo that I just alluded to. Really, that is amazing.
Really, it's a really funny part.
It might be the funniest scene in the whole movie. Although
there's 3 different scenes. There's a montage scene that has.
Oh my god, I love the
montage scene that's really funny. That I think if it had nailed that level of comedy just in that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Whitney Cummings scene that's very funny. How she react. I mean, there's things that just these weird things. There's also a scene where the girl talks about this guy talks about the other guy's grandma. That had me laughing hard, but it's weird.
It was funny. It was a great use of that pause, right? When you kind of
because it keeps going, and so you laugh because it's an uncomfortable pause.
Yep. And of course, that damn thong was embarrassingly funny. But anyway, there you go. Our review for Studio 666. Check it out and leave us some comments down below. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you want to see more of the Foo Fighters in films, horror or otherwise.
Because I think they're Fighters of Evil.
All right. Thank you, Christopher, for joining me. I'm so glad you got to see this and we got to talk about it.
Always here to rock with the doc.
Let's say good night.
Good night.